Except Kim. Hi, Kim. Yeah, I do. I need to tick, 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 dim lights. All right. Well, tonight we're going to continue on. We've only got tonight and next Wednesday night for the stories. And then the week after that is Jeopardy night, where you guys have to take on the kids in trivia over the stuff we've been studying. So I hope you're all ready. I don't know. You know, you got a little better attention span than a couple of the kids. Maybe not all of them, but so. Well, I know my wife and Rachel have been writing the questions since they're not directly teaching any group, so they're trying to be a little bit more impartial, and I've been trying to listen to them, and so. They are not. They are not. They are being left in the dark as well, and so we're going to have some fun doing Bible trivia over this whole first section. So, all right. Well, tonight we're going to continue on with the story. We're going to be in Numbers 20 and 21. And so tonight we're just going to read genealogies for the entire evening, and then you're going to be quizzed on it. No, that's not what we're doing. These are a couple stories out of the book of Numbers. There's actually several good stories in the book of Numbers, but Numbers gets a bad rap because of the genealogies that are in there. And so people are like, oh, I don't even want to read that book. By throwing that out, you miss a lot of great stories and a lot of great information as well. So tonight we're going to be looking at Numbers 20 and 21. And this is going to be, we're moving towards the end of the time in the wilderness, okay? As a matter of fact, we're going to switch out of the reference tonight from wandering in the desert to just heading towards the promised land, to an actual wilderness journey rather than just wandering. Up to this point, they've kind of been wandering aimlessly. Remember, they got 40 years to kill in the desert, and so God's been kind of leading them around, and they have literally made a complete loop, and they're back around to some of the places they were before. And so, but we are getting towards the end of this journey. We're in just the last, few years, or really few months, I guess, before this journey is going to come to an end. And so we're going to see tonight the death of Miriam, the death of Aaron, and we're going to foretell the death of Moses a little bit in this. So we're getting down towards that end on it. So in Numbers 20, it says, in the first month, the whole Israelite community arrived in the desert of Zin, and they stayed at Kadesh. There, Miriam died and was buried. Now there was no water for the community, and the people gathered in opposition to Moses and Aaron. We see this over and over and over again. As soon as people face any kind of a hardship, they turn around and go, oh, Moses and Aaron, why'd you do this to us? Over and over again. And, you wonder, why don't they get it? But then again, stop and think. Sometimes when we face opposition in our own life, no matter what it may be, we tend to feel like God isn't there for us, or God isn't listening to us, or God isn't providing for us, but yet we know He is. But we get so self-absorbed with what we want at that moment, we forget that God is supplying us with His mercies all the time. And so in this situation, they got thirsty. I could use a little water. They went, wait, where's the sink? It's like it just dawns on them after 40 years. Wait a minute, I can't just get a drink of water. What are we going to do? And so what is their first reaction? They quarreled with Moses and said, if only we had died when our brothers fell dead before the Lord. So they start out with a little bit new on this one. They don't go all the way back to Egypt to start with. They said, our brothers who died here in the wilderness because they rebelled against you, they were the lucky ones. We're the ones who are stuck here thirsty. And they're not that bad shape. God never let them get in that bad a shape. But they're, oh, woe is me. Thirst. Oh, what am I going to do? And they said, the Israelites who died before us, they're the lucky ones. They've already gone on. Oh, man, why do I have to be left out here with no water? And then they go, "Why did you bring the Lord's community into this wilderness that we and our livestock should die here? Why did you bring us up out of Egypt to this terrible place that has no grain or figs, grapevines or pomegranates, and there is no water to drink? Why didn't you just leave us slaves in Egypt where we were happy?" Really? Because you were crying out daily to the Lord for a deliverer when you were there. But now they're in the wilderness. They went, I'm kind of thirsty. Why didn't you just let me die in Egypt? Or die in the desert somewhere? So Moses and Aaron went from the assembly to the entrance to the tent of meeting, and they fell face down, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. The Lord said to Moses, "Take the staff, and you and your brother Aaron gather the assembly together. Speak to that rock before their eyes, and it will pour out its water." So just the fact that they can still go to the tent of meeting, they can watch Moses and Aaron walk up to the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord descends on this tent, should be a clue that we're not alone. The fact that every day there is this pillar of cloud that is leading them, or it is gathered over this tent, and every night there is a pillar of fire before them in the wilderness, and they're going, I don't know if God's still with us. He's right there. You can literally see him. And they're going, I don't know. It's just not that great out here. And so Moses goes to the Lord at the tent of meeting, and he says, what am I supposed to do? And you know that Moses is getting a little bit thin on this whole idea as well. And we're going to see that here with him. He's like, God, what am I going to do? And God says, gather the people together and go up before this rock and speak to this rock. Just tell it to bring forth water and watch the water pour out of a rock. So it says, you will bring water out of the rock for the community so that they and their livestock can drink. So Moses took the staff from the Lord's presence just as he commanded him. He and Aaron gathered the assembly together in front of the rock, and Moses said to them, listen, you rebels, must we bring you water out of this rock? Then Moses raised his arm and struck the rock twice with his staff. He was frustrated. He'd had enough of their grumbling and complaining. He was angry with them, and he lost it. After years in the wilderness, he's like, I've had enough. And so God says, go up to that rock and speak to that rock. Let that rock bring forth its water. And instead, Moses brought the people together. He chastised them, grabbed the stick, and he smacked it twice. Not what God asked him to do. Water gushed out, and the community and their livestock drank. Now, the people didn't know what Moses was supposed to do exactly. This was a Moses and Aaron and God thing. And God said, speak to the rock, and the people will drink. And Moses, in his anger, struck the rock twice. And God still brought forth the water, because the end was that God was going to give his people water and give them what they needed, regardless of Moses. But he told Moses to speak to the rock, and instead he struck it. And so by striking it, Moses lashed out in his anger, but he also did something in the eyes of the Lord that was probably not expected by him, and that was he proved that he really didn't trust God. This is Moses who's been following him for years. They've been meeting together at the tent of meeting and speaking, literally speaking to each other. But there was still this lapse, and Moses let his emotion override that. And God knew, because God knows his heart as well, that Moses had this moment of anger, but not only that, but kind of a moment of almost doubt. And so he struck the rock. Last time God said, bring forth water from the rock, he struck it. Just once. But God said, strike this rock and water will pour from it. And he goes, okay, boom, smack. Yeah, look at that, water. This time he went up there and he goes, you want water? And he smacks it twice. And the water pours out and the people went, hey, God provided water, yay. But it says, "But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not trust me in me enough to honor me as holy in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this community into the land I give them." You didn't trust me enough to honor me in front of them. You had one job. I asked you to speak to the rock. I was going to provide water for them. And really, God didn't even need Moses to provide that water for them. But God gave Moses an opportunity to show the community the trust and the faith that he has in God, and to show that all he had to do was speak it and God would make it happen, and there it was. And so God gave him the golden opportunity for the people to once again realize that Moses was God's chosen leader. And instead he smacks the rock, which again, the people didn't know the difference really, but God did. God said, I asked you just to speak to it, but you didn't respect me enough to follow my command. You didn't trust me enough to do what I asked you to do. Instead, you took matters into your own hands because you were angry with the people and you thought, I'm going to take care of this my way. And so God said, so here's the deal. You've led these people this far. You will not go into the land with them. Now, here's one of those little trivia splitting hair things. Moses did not lead the people into the land. He did not take them there. But did he get to go into the land? Much later, Aaron doesn't know where I'm going with this. He did. At the Transfiguration, Moses was there on the mountain in the land. So God did take him into the promised land, but it was in a much different context. But he did not lead the nation of Israel into there. He forfeited that because he did not follow what God commanded him to do. He didn't trust in him fully in that situation. And so he forfeited his right to lead the people into the land. So Moses does not lead them in. Aaron does not lead them in. Miriam has already died. That was the beginning of this. So it says, these were the waters of Meribah, where the Israelites quarreled with the Lord and where he was proven holy among them. Moses said to the messengers from Kadesh to the king of Edom, saying, so he sent these messengers in. He's at Kadesh again. They're looking at Edom. Edom is like at the bottom of the Dead Sea and moving up to the Jordanian side and all that area. So they're down in the wilderness again. They're kind of wanting to come up on the east side of the Dead Sea and make their way up to where they can come into the promised land. And so here they are. They're standing in the area of Edom, the descendants of Esau. These are kin, right? We're the descendants of Jacob. These are the descendants of Esau. We'll just go ahead and we'll cruise right on through here. So it says, he sent a messenger up to the king of Edom saying, this is what your brother Israel says. We're relatives. We're kin. This is what we say. You know about all the hardships that we have come on us. Our ancestors went down into Egypt, and we lived there many years. The Egyptians mistreated us and our ancestors. But when we cried out to the Lord, he heard our cry and sent an angel and brought us out of Egypt. Now we are here at Kadesh, a town on the edge of your territory. Please let us pass through your country. We will not go through any field or vineyard or drink water from any well. We will travel along the king's highway and not turn to the right or to the left until we have passed through your territory. We just want to cut through. We don't want your food. We don't want your grain. We don't want your livestock. We won't even drink water from your wells. We're just passing through, but we're at point A and point B is on the other side of your yard. And if we can pass through, we can be there in no time at all. Otherwise, it's like 40-some miles to go around the backside of Edom to get back to where they want to go. Instead, they got just a few miles right here. They said, hey, you can cut our trip down by a lot. So can we just cut through? And it says, but Edom answered, you may not pass through here. If you try, we will march out and attack you with the sword." The Israelites replied, "We will go along the main road, and if we or our livestock drink any of your water, we will pay for it. We only want to pass through on foot, nothing else." Again they answered, "You may not pass through." Then Edom came out against them with a large and powerful army. Since Edom refused to let them go through their territory, Israel turned away from them. So Edom said, "Absolutely not. You will not come through here." Now, this story is not being talked about as much for the kids, but I wanted to leave it in here and not take it out because we're going to jump to the next story here in just a second. But the reason this is important is because in the men's Bible study on Monday night, we've been studying Ezra and then Nehemiah. We just finished Nehemiah. But one of the things it talks about is when they established the temple. Now we got the tabernacle right here. When they established the temple, when they established worship in Israel, God tells them, "Do not let the Edomites or the Ammonites be amongst us in that assembly." They shut the door on Israel, said, "You are not welcome in our territory. You will not walk through our territory. You will not cross any part of our land. If you step foot in it, we will attack you with our army, and we're ready to go." And so the Israelites pulled back, went around. And God, when he established the rules for the temple, said, "Edom will not come into my house. I'm shutting the door." And even in Nehemiah, he says, this is why. Because of the way they treated you guys when you were in your Exodus. These people that stood against God, God takes care of. Goes back to what we were talking about Sunday a little bit with vengeance and taking revenge. And God tells the Israelites, don't go in there. The cloud went around. They followed the cloud. He says, fine, we will not step foot in your land. But there is payback. I don't want the Edomites in my assembly. They're not to come here. They have turned their back fully on God at that point. And God says, then I'm going to turn my back on you. And so the Edomites are excluded from worship in the temple and in Israel when they come before the Lord. It says the whole Israelite community set out from Kadesh and came to Mount Hor. At Mount Hor, near the border of Edom, the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Aaron will be gathered to his people. He will not enter the land I give the Israelites, because both of you rebelled against my command at the waters of Meribah. Get Aaron and his son Eleazar and take them up Mount Hor. Remove Aaron's garments and put them on his son Eleazar, for Aaron will be gathered to his people. He will die there." Now, Mount Hor, where's that? Kind of a little bit of a mystery as to its exact location, but tradition holds that it is inside the area that is now known as Petra. So if you go to Petra in Jordan, you can take about a 45-minute hike up this mountain, up this trail, and you'll go to an area that was set up to commemorate the death of Aaron on Mount Hor there. As a matter of fact, it is because of this traditional burial site that Petra was even found in the modern age and opened up to people to go in. People had kind of lost track of it after the Roman period and stuff. It was a Nabatean trading city stuff. The Romans established a large fortress there, a large presence there, I guess you'd say, to control the spice trade, to control the trades going across the desert and things like that. And it just kind of was lost to time. And it wasn't until the modern age, and I won't go into the whole story of it here basically, but a man who was looking for this lost city of Petra, looking for these things, learned Arabic, studied it intensively, and went and asked them to see the tomb of Aaron. Some locals in that area. I come seeking the tomb of Aaron. I want to go worship at the tomb of Aaron. And they took him down, and he discovered Petra then. In more modern age, because he was seeking this tomb, and that's the traditional site of it. So if you want to go to the burial site of Aaron, traditionally, go to Petra and wear comfy shoes. and you can take a little hike and you can go up to it. Or I think you can rent a mule. So if you don't wear comfy shoes, take a big pocketbook. One way or another, you can get up there. So it says, Moses did as the Lord commanded. They went up Mount Hor to the in sight of the whole community. Moses removed Aaron's garments and put them on his son Eleazar. And Aaron died there on top of the mountain. Then Moses and Eleazar came down from the mountain, and when the whole assembly, our community, learned that Aaron had died, all the Israelites mourned for him 30 days. So Aaron goes up there. God says, this is where you stay. So they take the high priestly garments off of him, put them on his son. He becomes the high priest now. Remember, there's only one high priest, especially at this time. We can get into this at our discussion later. But this time, one high priest. It is a descendant directly of Aaron. And he becomes that high priest. Aaron steps down from that position because he is going to stay there on the mountain. He's done. They're going to bury him up there. So Aaron goes up, he dies there on the mountain, his son comes down as the new high priest. The people are greatly distressed, obviously, because they've lost Aaron, who has been a leader for them for all these years. And so they have a 30-day period of mourning for him there below the mountain. And so that's kind of where they're at in this journey at this moment. It said, when the Canaanite king of Arad, who lived in the Negev, heard that Israel was coming along the road to Atharim, he attacked the Israelites and captured some of them. Then Israel made this vow to the Lord: if you will deliver these people into our hands, we will totally destroy their cities. God, if you give them over to us, we can save our fellow Israelites. We are going to annihilate these people. We are going to destroy their cities. So it says, the Lord listened to Israel's plea and gave the Canaanites over to them. They completely destroyed them and their towns. So the place was named Hormah. Hormah basically means destruction. Nice little Hebrew word to put in your vocabulary there. Destruction or destroyed. So the Israelites are attacked. And again, they have been wandering for a long time. They have not really had much confrontation or physical battle. So remember, years ago, they didn't even want to go into the land when God said, go take it, because they were afraid they'd encounter war. And so here they are, they're attacked. They're getting closer to when they're going to go into the promised land. They get attacked. They pray out to God and say, God, if you deliver us, if you give us victory over them, we will completely destroy their cities. And God hears them, and it's a great opportunity for them to get a little battle practice in. And so that's exactly what God does, is he delivers them from the hands of these oppressors, from these people. He delivers them, and he says, now go in and completely destroy them, and they do. And so God is like, okay, we're preparing you for what's going to happen. Now, the reason they hadn't been attacked up to this point is not because nobody cared that they were there. It was God had his hand on them, and God let them come and be attacked so that they could start to be prepared for some of the things that they're going to face. They're coming into the nitty-gritty here. We're in the book of Numbers right now. You go, as you're reading along, you get into the book of Deuteronomy, and that's where we're going to be when we see the death of Moses. But we'll talk a little bit more about it next week. But I want you to remember that the entire book of Deuteronomy takes place in a month. It's like 28 days. We've been wandering for 40 years here in this. And that entire book is a retelling of everything that they have gone through to the next generation. And it takes place very quick. So they're almost to that place where they're going to do it. And we'll talk more about Deuteronomy next week when we come in for that last lesson on it. But it says, so they went in and they totally destroyed the place, and they even named it Destroyed or Destruction. They traveled from Mount Hor along the route to the Red Sea to go around Edom. They had to go kind of down and around, back up the other side. It says, but the people grew impatient on the way. They spoke against God and against Moses and said, why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? Same song, second verse. Moses goes, really? Again? We're doing this? There is no bread. There is no water, and we detest this miserable food. Quail, manna, water, things like that. We're tired of it. We want real bread. We want good food. We want fresh water. We want this stuff. Why did you bring us up out of Egypt? And they start grumbling against Moses again. So God is hearing this, and he's getting tired of them. I mean, he has been along the way because they are just such fickle people, and they complain all the time. So it says, then the Lord sent venomous snakes among them. Anybody here love snakes? I don't. Just the thought of those snakes coming up is nasty enough. And then venomous snakes among all these people. And it says, and they bit the people, and many Israelites died. Oh, you wished you'd died with your brothers? I'll give you a chance. Just stand right there, because I got some friends that are coming into the camp. And so venomous snakes come in and start to wipe out the people of Israel. And it says, the people came to Moses and said, we sinned when we spoke against the Lord and against you. Okay, we're sorry. We're sorry. Make it better. Make them go away. We don't like these snakes anymore. Please. So it says, pray that the Lord will take the snakes away from us. So Moses prayed for the people. The Lord said to Moses, make a snake and put it up on a pole. Now, this is one of those stories and numbers that some people have probably never even heard, but it's a legitimate story here, obviously. He says to Moses, make a bronze snake, make a serpent, and put it up on a pole. Okay? That's your big command here. And it says, anyone who is bitten can look at it and live. So here's this pole with a snake on top of it, and if you get bit, you are going to die unless you look at that bronze snake. If you look to the bronze snake, you'll live. It's a simple rule that God put for them. And it's a simple act of faith initially of if you're bit, look to the snake. Because if you get bit and go, well, it doesn't do any good to look at the snake, well, guess luck, you're going to die because you didn't look at the snake. So you get bit, you look at the snake. It's what God says. It's a simple act of salvation for you. Don't take your eyes off it. When you're bit, look. And if you look, you live. And if you don't look, you don't listen, you die. Ta-da! So, where this comes back into play is the book of John, chapter 3. And it talks about Moses making the snake and lifting it up in the wilderness in the same way that Christ will be lifted up on a pole. Just like that snake was essentially their salvation in the wilderness when they looked up and they saw the snake on the top of this pole, Jesus Christ hung on a cross so that we could have salvation from sin. In the same way that people looked there and were saved, look to the cross, look to Christ. That's where your salvation is. And he will be lifted up among the people. So it said, so Moses made a bronze snake and put it up on the pole. Then, when anyone was bitten by the snake and looked at the bronze snake, they lived. Simple. Right? And that's what they were to do. Now, we also know, if you go back ahead into like 2 Kings 18, something like that, the story of Hezekiah, you're going to find out that Hezekiah, when he was cleansing the temple and trying to restore proper worship in Israel, one of the things he had to destroy was the bronze snake that Moses made. Up to the time of Hezekiah, it was still in the temple. So through David, through all those earlier kings and everything, the bronze snake was still there. And Hezekiah had to destroy the bronze serpent. You want to know why? Because people were worshiping it as a foreign god. They started worshiping the stinking snake. And God said, bust it. Destroy it. They've totally missed the point. And that's the problem that we have with so many things is we look at the solution that God gives and we try to make that the good luck charm or the amulet that we're going to pray to all of a sudden now, and we give that the power that God is the one who is actually in it. That's why Jeff's theory, we couldn't have the Ark of the Covenant with us on the earth right now. We can debate whether or not it's still hidden under Jerusalem, or whether it's in the catacombs, or whether it's in the little house down in Ethiopia, whatever. We can go through all those things. But the reason that it is not exposed to the public is because, you mark my words, if they brought it out right now, people would worship that stinking thing. They would be bowing down to that idol made of gold instead of the God who it was created for him to have his presence on. We would worship it like any other golden idol. And so I don't think God wants it around, because he knows how fickle we are. And here's a great example. Moses, make a snake, put it on a pole. When the people are bitten by venomous snakes, if they look at that, they will live. Great. Fast forward a few hundred years, people are bowing down to the snake on the pole. They're worshiping the snake. So God said, destroy that stupid thing. Just get it out of there. All right, any questions? They do. Was it called the caduceus or something is the medical symbol, and they still have the snake on the pole thing representative. It's the basis of it, yeah. Yep. Look to it for healing. Yes, sir.
So at the beginning tonight, we were talking about how Moses didn't have faith in God.
He had faith in God. He didn't have the faith to give God the respect that he needed at that moment.
Okay, that makes sense.
You read stories like that, and it really makes you understand how much you need grace.
Yes. Yeah. Whoa. It really does bring out how much we need grace, doesn't it? When you read this and you read the law and you find out what's going on. But yeah. So, yes, Moses still had faith. He was still meeting with God. He knew who God was. He trusted God. He believed in God. But when God asked him to do this task, he didn't have the faith to give him the respect that he deserved in that. He didn't follow God's plan. He did it on his own. And so that's what God was saying is, I know you trusted me, you believe me, but you still did it your way, not my way.
But he didn't do it because he didn't trust God. He did it because he was mad at the Israelites, right?
But,
Or is it both?
it's both because he didn't listen to God. And so God said, regardless of your emotion, you should have listened to me. This is what I asked you to do, and you did it on your own. You decided you knew more. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, if he would have just spoke to the rock, then turned around and smacked a couple Israelites, God would have forgave him probably easier than, Yeah. Yep. But, again, though, God said, this is what I want you to do. And so then you get into the deep, philosophical debate of what's the difference between him not obeying God there and them not obeying any other portion of the law. Because God said, speak to this rock. And he goes, no, I'm going to do it the way I want to do it. Smack. God goes, not what I said. And so what's the difference when God says, put no other God before me? And they go, well, I just had one. And so that's where he broke that faith with God. Not faith in God, but broke that good faith with God by not doing what he was told to do, by not carrying out, and by letting himself, his own emotions, override what God had asked him to do. And I think that's what we have to be careful of, is that we don't say, oh, but I know better. And we don't. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I mean, God was very patient. You look at the God, we've talked about this over the last several weeks. You look at the God of the Old Testament that people say was this mean, wrathful God. God could be wrathful, but only justly, only in righteousness. But God was a God of mercy and grace all the way through this whole story. If he was not a God of mercy, they'd have never made it out of Egypt. Because they rebelled against Moses before Moses ever went the first time to Pharaoh. And God would have said, these guys don't need us. If he was really wrathful, he would have just ended it there. Or he would have just went ahead and ended Moses in the wilderness like, he almost did. But God is a God of mercy and a God of grace and a God that desires a right relationship with his people. He desires that relationship. The reason that he went from the law to Christ is because the law was given to show us that we could not ever be good enough to be in a relationship with God. We could never fulfill everything we needed to do to be in the presence of a righteous God. So Christ came and paid our debt once and for all so that we could go into the presence of God himself. And in doing that, he opened that door. That in itself is mercy and grace. And that's the God of the Old Testament that sent his one and only Son to die so that whoever would believe in him should have everlasting life. That is a God of mercy and grace. He desires relationship. He desires covenant with his people. We just have to stop doing it our way.
It says in Proverbs many times that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And that illustration with the rock illustrates that pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
You fear the Lord.
Yep.
Not a coward.
Nope.
When he says something, this is how you do it.
And it's really, even the snakes. Are you going to keep your focus on the snakes that are coming after you, or you're going to look to the snake that's going to give you salvation? You might get bit, but you're going to live. But if you're watching the ones on the ground, you're going to die. You got to look to what he's told you to do. And he gave a way out. He says, this is the way you escape this. It doesn't say if you look at the snake, you'll never be bit again. It says when you're bit, look at the snake and you'll live. And I think there's some wisdom in that too. That he didn't say, as soon as you look at the snake, you won't be bit anymore because I'll know that you're looking at me. He says, nah, you're going to get bit. But when you do, you're going to live. Those who refuse to look at the snake, those who refuse to follow the command of God, they're going to die. But you're all going to get bit. Any other questions? Peggy, you're quiet. Okay. Right. Yeah. No, but it's puts it in a little bit better, concise package, I guess. But it's true. If we lose faith in God, then how can he trust us? Right. Right. Yep. Because he is a just and righteous God. And I also think you put it there. He doesn't want us to think on our own to make our own rules. But you didn't also say he wants to control us. God desires relationship. Relationship is that working alongside of each other in a sense. God says, this is what it's going to have to be. This is the way it is. Now, come alongside of me and let's do this. He doesn't want just mindless robots walking around, we hear and obey. Instead, he wants us to obey because we desire that relationship with him. And when we hear his word, it should penetrate our hearts and we should desire to obey his commands, not feel like we have to or just be mindless with it. He's like, no, I want you to come into a relationship where it's an exchange, where he can have that true. We accept him and he showers us with grace and mercy. And it's that back and forth. And that's what he wanted with Moses too, is that exchange of, I'm asking you to do this. And Moses goes, no, I'm going to do it my own way. And he says, then I can't trust you're going to do this. You've broken that bond because you're still thinking you're in control, and you're not. So yeah, he desires that relationship. That's the whole thing with it. Is go back. I talk a lot about that, but go back to Samuel going and talking to Saul. And when Saul decides to offer the sacrifices rather than wait for Samuel to arrive in 7 days, he says, well, it's the seventh day. He's not here yet. Let's go ahead and offer the sacrifices. And Samuel's response from the Lord was, to obey is better than sacrifice. to listen to the Lord and follow his commands and his decrees is better than all the worthless religion in the world. And so what Saul was seeing is, I have to make a sacrifice before I go to war, because that's what God said. But Samuel's saying, no, what you were told to do was wait till I arrived. And then we would offer the sacrifice before you go to war. But Saul was looking at it as, I've got to click the boxes. Religion. If I make the sacrifice, if I say this prayer, if I do this, God has to give me victory. And Samuel goes, no. You were to listen to God, and then you would have victory. And God said, these are the things we're going to do. Samuel's going to arrive to do the sacrifice, and then you're going to do these things. And instead, he jumped ahead because he thought, all that matters is it gets done. Well, that's religion. And God says, I want relationship. You need to listen to me. You need to obey my commands. That's what I want, is that back and forth. So, yeah, so it is that communication. It's not just a mindless, check the boxes and I'm going to be good. So. He did. He did. He took away some of God's glory, and he took away some of Moses' own glory. Because God said, I'm going to show the people again, definitively, that you are my man. You're the one I'm speaking to. This is what I'm going to be. And God's glory was going to be really glorified when he didn't even have to touch the rock. He just said, God says, let there be water pouring out of this thing. Water gushes out. Moses and God both make an impact on the nation of Israel for the glory of God. And Moses took that away. So, all right, any other questions? Yes?
How long was Aaron up on the mountain before he died?
Don't know for sure. Probably not very long. It's kind of like with Moses, he walks up there and he died. He and God walked up on the hill, and that was it. So I don't, probably not very long. I think he went up there basically to die. They transferred the stuff over, and that was kind of it.
Do you think he saved face for Aaron by sending him up on the mountain?
I don't know if he really saved face for Aaron. I think, because it said that he was still in the sight of the Israelites, I think that they wanted to see, God wanted them to see the transfer of that power from him to Eleazar, with Moses there as the mediator, and God being able to show the people that now I am with Eleazar. He is now my high priest. And so kind of the ceremony of it. And then also, Aaron was able to die in peace and in his own, own way, I guess. Not as public spectacle. So. I think we're good.